going to be. I'm on now, I think.
Hang on a minute, I'll get you. I'll hold it down a minute. There you go.
I asked you if you had to hold it down. You said no. So he wanted to feel important. You know, there's more people than when I sat down a while. There's just pouring in back there. I don't know. Is there a bus out there, Brother Phil? All right. Boy, what a joy to be here tonight and to be with this church that we was with last year, 15 months ago. I think we were here in October. Had a wonderful time with y'all. And how many were here? How many of you were here? All right. Probably not half the crowd, I don't think. So listen, how many are here tonight you've never heard me before? And I'll ask after, how many wish you hadn't heard me? We'll ask that at 10 o'clock when we get done. And Brother McMillan's not laughing because he knows that could happen. We was just at Brother McMillan's church for 2 nights, and I felt bad the first night. When I got done and I walked, I felt like, man, I might have went too long. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't look at my clock. And when I got to the back, I looked at my clock and I felt bad. But I didn't feel anything from the people that I'd gone too long, but I felt a little guilty. And then last night, I thought I was short. And I went back there and I looked at my clock, my phone, and I think I was longer than the night before. And he's nodding his head. Yeah, there you are. And but it didn't feel like it last night. I don't know. But anyway, tonight we're gonna continue our conference here for the next tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday. Sunday we'll have Sunday school. I'll be doing something for Sunday school, and have to be brief there, Brother McMillan, because somebody just got to. So, and then we'll have the Sunday morning service. Can't be too long then either, because we're going to eat, and free of charge. Everyone that comes on Sunday, we're going to go over here, and we're going to eat lunch over there in the fellowship hall, and then we're going to come back here. We're going to, I'm not sure how we're going to do it. We're going to set something up. We'll have a round table event that's going to be fun. And I've got some plans I'm not sure I've told the preacher about, but I'm going to bring my camera, and we're going to set it up here, and I'm going to record my YouTube program. How many watch my YouTube program sometimes? Oh, quite a few of you. Well, we're going to record it, half hour, whatever it is. We're going to try to record that. I'd like to do a Facebook Live, but I don't have enough signal in. Do you guys have internet here? All right, so I think I barely got a dot, so I don't think we probably won't be able to do Facebook Live, but we'll see. But I do a lot of those. We did a couple at Brother McMillan's church. I videoed Miss Megan. I didn't get me, but she was a lot better looking, so I did her live stream. She doesn't know it, but she's on the internet out there. So anyway, wasn't that wonderful, huh? I had not heard her do that second song. But the first song, if you've watched me any length of time or seen some of my Facebook live videos, you have heard that song every time I come on. I wish we'd all been ready. That's kind of the theme song for the program. And she does a much better job on that than the original singer. Anybody remember the old song? 1969, I think that came out. And if you've seen the guy that sings that, I guarantee you she's better looking. And but anyway, he was out of the Chuck Smith Calvary Church, Calvary Chapel, whatever you called that movement. And that song was very popular back in the day. Even in the 80s, it was popular. But it's kind of gone away now, and I think we're trying to bring it back. And I love that song. Very moving. It really makes you think. I wish we'd all been ready. And that's what prophecy conferences are about. It's getting ready for the Lord's return. Number one, if you're not saved, it's to make sure you know that you need to be saved. Because if you're not, you will be left behind. And you do not want to be left behind for that terrible time called the tribulation, or Daniel's 70th week. You do not want to be left here on planet Earth for that event that's coming. There's nothing to compare with what's getting ready to happen during the tribulation. Nothing. You can't read it in a book. You can't imagine it. The second half, the Lord says, is the time of great tribulation, greater than any time in the history of the world. Greater than the Holocaust. You just can't imagine what's coming during that time. There's a 5-month period of time in the second half where nobody dies for 5 months. And you say, well, boy, that's good. Not when you find out what's going on for those 5 months. The Bible says an angel falls from heaven, or a star falls from heaven. People argue with me all the time about stuff like this. And, well, Brother Goodness, it says a star, it's a star. And I'll say, well, you know what's funny? That star has a key in its hand. And so, you ever seen a star that has a key in its hand? You ever seen a star that has a hand? Now, this one has not only a hand, it has a key in its hand. It's Satan being thrown out of heaven, and he has a key in his hand. He opens up the bottomless pit, and he lets the devils out for 5 months upon the earth. And the Bible says men will seek death for those 5 months, but death will flee from them. And I picture that as men jumping off buildings, falling to the pavement 30 stories below, and laying on the pavement broken, but still alive. I can see people putting a gun to their head and shooting themselves, and yet laying on the floor still alive. That's pretty graphic, but bad times. You don't want to be here for that. And secondly, we need to not only be saved, but you need to be right with the Lord. You need to be right with the Lord. Now, if you're not right with the Lord, you're still going. But it's not going to be as fun for you. And you're going to be ashamed. The Bible says some will be ashamed at his appearing. And you'll still go to heaven. That's a wonderful thing. But you won't get that well done, thou good and faithful servant. And I've got this goal, and I've shared this at many churches across the country. I've said this. I'd like, and I know this isn't possible because God is omniscient. He knows everything. But I kind of have this feeling. I'd like for the Lord to come back at the rapture. I'd like for the groom to come to get the bride and be almost surprised at how many people were expecting him. Now, I know you can't surprise the Lord. I get that. But in other words, I'd like to get some people looking for the return of the Lord. And that's what my ministry is about. And I believe that God has called me to this. Back in 2014, I wrote that book, God's Final Jubilee, that took off and really propelled my ministry. And God really spoke to me in 2014. I'm not saying I heard a voice, but the Lord spoke to me. And I knew at that moment that my ministry was going to change, and I was going to be, 99% of my ministry would be prophecy. And by the way, not just the Baptist. And I'm a Baptist. I'm an old-fashioned, independent, right-wing, King James Baptist. But God smacked me in the side of the head at that kitchen table. And I've shared this with people. God let me know this wasn't for the Baptists. This is for the saints. And you may not understand what I mean there, and that's okay. But the Lord's not just coming for Baptists, right? And if he is just coming for Baptists, which ones of us? Right? So he's coming for the saints. And I know we say the rapture of the church, but nowhere in the Bible does it say the rapture is for the church. The rapture is for the saints. Okay? But anyway, so the book table's back there. The brand new book is called 7 Clocks Are Ticking. And if you don't have that yet, I would highly suggest you get it. Most important book that I've written. There are over 25 full-color pictures in the book. So if you can't read, you can look at the pictures. Amen? And lots of color pictures in it. And a powerful book. And I've had, I don't know how many testimonies I've got. People have written me and shared what the book did for them. Many folks have said the chapter called The Church is the Ticking Clock. Many folks have said that's their favorite chapter. The second favorite chapter is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. This is a brand new PowerPoint, by the way. I've never done what I'm going to do tonight in anybody's church. This is brand new. My wife just finished writing this sermon for me, as a matter of fact. And she helps me put the PowerPoint. She does most of it. I tell her what I want. She finds pictures and puts it in there. And I come back and I fix it. Amen. And no, that's not exactly true. But thank the Lord for my wife. But this is brand new. I've never done this in anybody's church. And this is actually out of a chapter in the brand new book. And we're going to talk tonight about the ticking nuclear clock. And we're going to hit some very, very strange and scary things tonight. In fact, folks have said the scariest chapter, if there is a scary chapter, is what we're going to talk about tonight. And I think you're going to glean some things from it. So with that in mind, let's have a word of prayer and we'll jump right into it. Father in heaven, thank you for loving us. Thank you for this church, from Brother Wiles and his good testimony here in this neck of the woods, and wonderful church and folks that he has. Thank you for Brother McMillan and the great friendship we've had with him and the great meeting we had there. Lord, thank you for the good crowd and the many that have come out tonight, hungry to hear from heaven tonight. And Lord, I pray that they'll glean something tonight that'll help them. There's visitors that have come from several hours away. We're so thankful for them. And folks from other churches nearby that have come, and what a blessing that is. Bless the meeting tonight. Lord, may we, when we get done, may we say to one another, it was good to be in the house of the Lord. And it's raining outside, it's wet, it's mucky, but yet God's Spirit is here, and we're here. And Lord, I pray you'll speak to us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Don't forget the book table in the back. The book is there. The Mystery of the Jubilee book is back there. Unbelievable what's in that book. The Mystery of Paradise. You've got to read that. If you're confused about the dispensations and Old Testament salvation and all that, we're not getting into that tonight. But if you're confused about how to get saved in the Old Testament or in Abraham's day or in the tribulation, read that chapter called The Mystery of Paradise. Find out why there was a paradise, and they didn't go to heaven. They went to paradise when they died. And you'll learn some important things. You'll find out that Abraham understood the resurrection. Yes, he did. When he was getting ready to kill Isaac, remember, he went up on Mount Moriah, held the knife up, going to kill Isaac, and the Lord stopped him. And you don't see it in Genesis, but you go to Hebrews 11, you'll find that Abraham believed that God was going to raise Isaac from the dead as a figure or a type of the one to come. Now, is that not the resurrection? Them guys in the Old Testament understood more than some of these preachers today are letting you know. And you better do your own Bible study, find out what the Bible says. Because I'm telling you, you're going to meet David and Abraham and King Saul. You didn't think King Saul was in heaven, did you? And how about Lot? Is he in heaven? Well, he can't be in heaven. He didn't live right. He got drunk, committed incest with his daughters. Yes, he did. And Peter says, just Lot vexed his soul with riotous living. He's in heaven. So you don't go to heaven because you live right. And you don't keep your salvation by living right. It's the grace of Almighty. It's what that girl sang about in that second song. And it's Christ that saves us. And so, anyway, the book table back there, the Revelation Study Guide, you love that, a chapter-by-chapter study of Revelation, the Barley Harvest book. If you're not a reader, or if you just like some DVDs, I have a couple of DVD sets back there that you would enjoy. All right, so let's jump into this here. We're going to talk about tonight the nuclear clock. That's what the discussion is going to be. And I'm going to refresh this here. Here we go. And because I want to make sure I don't go past 2 hours. Refreshing that, starting fresh with my 2-hour mark. Anyway, I do have my phone out tonight because Brother McMillan promised to throw something at me if I went too long. So, but can everybody see that okay? You're welcome to move up. There are plenty of seats up here. I think most of the screens you're going to be able to see, but there's some pretty shocking things we're going to show you on the slides tonight. And well, listen, can you read the bottom there? It's 5 minutes to midnight. That's what the book's about. 7 clocks, all ticking towards a certain event that's coming on the horizon. This is one of them. The nuclear clock is ticking, and it's 5 minutes to deadline. 5 minutes to midnight, and this is just one of the 7 clocks. Israel is a clock. The church is a clock. The 6,000-year clock is ticking. These are all in the book. But some of what I'm going to give you in the slides tonight is not in the book, but the main thoughts are in the book. But we're going to talk about this nuclear clock. And this nuclear clock is one of 7 clocks all ticking towards the return of Christ. And it is 5 minutes to midnight. Let me read a couple paragraphs here. And these are right out of the book, but I've got them printed out here. War broke out on the earth as soon as Adam took the first bite of the forbidden fruit. The first deadly weapon was a simple rock or a stick in the hand of Cain as he took out his anger against his own brother Abel. The final war upon the earth is going to be quite different. It is described as so horrific that if God doesn't intervene, the entire world will perish. Mark chapter 13, verse 20. It's also in Matthew 24. Except the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. And so, in other words, the end time, the battle of Armageddon is going to be so bad that if God doesn't intervene, the world would wipe itself out. Now that tells you something. That tells you that when we get close to the end time, right before the rapture, the world has got to be in the place where it could destroy itself. Now that was never possible 100 years ago. It wasn't even possible probably 50 or 60 years ago, maybe even less than that. But as you're going to see tonight, that is possible 10 times over tonight. It is very plain in Scripture that the final generation upon the earth before the Lord comes back has the ability to destroy all of mankind. I believe that day is here, and that it only by the grace of God that we have not already destroyed ourselves. Now think about that. Doesn't man mess up everything he touches? Look what we've done to the home. We've bettered the home's better today, right? We got little 5-year-old kids being sent to the hospital to have sex change operations, so the little girl can become a little boy. And 50 years ago they'd have locked the parents up, thrown the key away. Now today we give them we honor them on CNN. Did you see? I think it was NBC, but I could be wrong. Did you see that? They had that 11-year-old drag queen kid. Anybody see that? It was on NBC. It's on the internet. It's on Facebook. It's right on the set of NBC. They were all clapping and laughing. They brought on this 11-year-old boy dressed. You know what a drag queen is, right? Dressed up like a girl, and he dances around and they laugh and they sit him down and they talk to him and then they bring these full-grown drag queens in. Of course, everyone's clapping. They're laughing. National television news, family television. And, there was a day the parents of that 11-year-old kid the dad would have been took out back and whipped by the men in town. Back in the day, society took care of stuff like that. If you were beating your wife, the men would get together one night about 10 o'clock at night, and they'd show up at your house, and they'd drag the man outside, and they'd beat him for an hour. And they said, "Don't you beat your wife again, we're coming back." That's society back in the olden days. They took care of stuff. You didn't let stuff like that go on. Today we let 1 million babies get murdered down on Main Street every year in our towns and cities. And the truth is God's people have let it happen. 1972 or whenever that was, where were God's people? Where were the churches? Where were the pastors? Where was the outrage as the Supreme Court said it's okay to murder our children in the womb? And I'm telling you, we got to quit looking so highly upon ourselves. We got to quit blaming the world around us for the problems and the decay of our nation. And it's time to look in the mirror and find out who's really to blame. It's us. It's God's. It's always been God's people. Look, 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. You've all preached it before. You preachers and you folks have all read it. You've heard it. If my people who are called by my name. He didn't say if the Planned Parenthood people or the drag queen people or the murderers. He said, if my people shall humble themselves and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then and pray, then will I hear from heaven and will heal their land and forgive their sin. Forgive their sin. Turn from their wicked ways. Who's he talking to? Saved people. Did you catch that? I shared this with a guy that said, well, Christians can't live like that. And I opened my Bible and I showed him 2 Chronicles chapter 7. If my people shall turn from their wicked ways. And his eyes got big. And he knew I had him. I said, no, you tell me God's people can't live like the devil. Right there in 2 Chronicles chapter 7. If my people, one of the things he said, if they'll turn from their wicked ways. Now, we got to get off our throne here. We got to get back to earth here and realize we're sinful people. We're saved sinful people. And there's no perfect people in this room. And there's nobody in this room that's going to stand before God one day and thump his chest and say, "Boy, man, I lived up to it." You know, it bothers me. Preacher, it bothers me when people say, "Man, some of these people don't live right." Well, you know what? Which one of us is living right? Which one of us can point a finger at somebody and like we're not as bad as they are? You know, Paul said he felt like he was the chiefest of sinners. Now, I like that attitude because I feel the same way. I do not deserve to go to heaven. I do not deserve the grace of God. And I'm going to heaven for one reason. Jesus Christ paid my sin debt, and I placed my faith in Him. I didn't turn from all my sins. I didn't know all my sins. It is my sins that caused me to fall to my knees and cry out for mercy. I didn't sign a piece of paper saying, God said, I'll save you if you promise to go to church. I didn't sign anything like that. Did you? No, quit looking down your nose at those. Well, if she was really saved, she wouldn't shack up with that guy. How do you know? How do you know? By the way, Jesus didn't tell that woman at the well to throw him out. Now, I hope she did. But that wasn't part of the deal. Come see a man. Is not this the Messiah? He told me everything I ever did. And conviction set in. We don't know the rest of the story. Some of you preachers preach like you know I guarantee you, if she really got it, she threw him out. Quit adding to the Bible. You don't know what happened after that woman left. She drew a whole bunch of people to come see him. They saw something in her. But anyway, let's move on here. Have I made anyone mad yet? Because we got to make somebody mad during the service. And the study of history. The study of history is the study of war. Face it. You know, and today, everybody, we got to get rid of guns. We got to quit going to war. Good luck with that. Jesus said there'll be wars and rumors of wars. They're going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what? The Bible says that God is the God of war. So all these warmongers or these people who are against war, better take that up with God. God told Israel to go fight and kill people. By the way, God told them to build walls. And the Vatican's got walls. The Pope preaches against our wall, but he's got one. Pretty big one, too. Try getting into the Vatican tonight. And you'll be stopped. You'll be frisked, metal detectors, and probably be stripped down. I mean, you name it. You ain't getting in there. But they want to let them in our country because they want to destroy our country because the world hates us. And so we began with a war against God in heaven with Satan. The first battle began outside of time, in eternity, with God and Satan. That's where war started. And you say, well, when did that happen? Was that, there is no wind out there. That's another chapter in the mystery book, The Mystery of Time. Try wrapping your brain around time. You know, the Bible says in Revelation 10:6, it talks about when time shall be no more. What is that talking about? There's coming a day when time will cease. And outside of our universe, outside of this 7,000-year period of history, there's no time. God created the universe, Genesis 1, verse 1, God created our universe inside of time and space. Einstein understood some of this. He understood time travel was possible, and I agree with him, though I do not believe we will achieve that. But it is all through the Bible, time travel, the Mountain of Transfiguration. What do you think that was? Jesus is there. Peter, James, and John are there. And two men from different centuries show up on that mountain, Moses and Elijah. I believe the two witnesses of the tribulation. I believe that's why they're there. They have to talk to him about something. They have to witness something because they're coming back to the earth to testify what they've seen and heard. You got to seen and heard something if you're going to come back and tell about it, right? And I believe that they're the two witnesses. And by the way, they're from hundreds of years apart. Moses was back in Exodus, and Elijah's in the book of Kings. They're from centuries apart, hundreds of years apart. Where did they come from? Can I tell you something spooky? They came They came through a portal. Sci-fi people would call it a portal. What does the Bible call it? A door. I can show you that door in Revelation 4, verse 1. After the seven churches, it says, and after these things, behold, a door was opened in heaven. What is that door? It's a portal. It's a doorway to another dimension. Heaven is another dimension. Paul said God is not far from every one of us. He's close as you can touch, but you can't. It's another dimension. Now, you're not going to understand that. We can't get our brain around that. I mean, Einstein, as brilliant as he was, understood a fraction of it, but you and I can't. The fact that Elijah and his, or maybe it was Elisha and his servant Gehazi, and they were surrounded by bad guys, and Elijah was just going about his business, charging his cell phone, that kind of stuff, and trying to get a movie in the DVD player. And his servant was nervous. That's me. I'd been nervous. Man, they're going to break in any minute. Remember what Elisha said? Lord, open his eyes that he may see. What did he mean? Open that door. Open that portal, God. Let him see what's out there. And all of a sudden, Gehazi looks out and he sees what? Angels surrounding him. And all of a sudden he realized, everything's okay in my Father's house. Nothing to worry about here. We got protection. And so what did he see? He saw into another. God pulled back a curtain and allowed him to see in there. So, time, the study of war. War began with God and Satan outside of time in the heavenlies, and God creates the universe down here inside of time. And while Adam and Eve are created, they're on the earth. Satan shows up. And, of course, I brought this up because of the gap theory stuff, and people are so confused, and people are always asking, well, when did Satan fall from heaven? But they get this grin on their face. They think they got you. I said, what do you mean when? There is no when. Well, there is no when. When did he fall from heaven? Outside of time. You can't put a when on that. There's no past in eternity. There's no future in eternity. There's only real time. Revelation 12. Same thing. By the way, Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. That's a funny phrase, isn't it? That's the same thing God told Moses. Tell the people, I am has sent you. Why did God call himself I am? Because there's no I was, there's no I will be. There's just I am. That means something. And Jesus said the same thing. Before Abraham was, inside of time, I am. Now there's his deity. There's the fact that Jesus always was. He's back in Genesis 1:26 or 7 there. Let us make man in our image. He's there. The Trinity. So, all right, let's move on here. You're getting me too side. We're not getting where we need to get. So we'll be here all night, and it's not my fault. And I went to the public school. I can't be held accountable for these things. So anyway, that's my excuse anyway, and I'm sticking to it. You'll have a hard time looking back at history to find a time of world peace. It seems like war is in our nature, and we simply must have it. and nothing's changed. Somebody said, this is an old Prussian proverb. I don't know what century somebody wrote this, but listen to this. In case of rain, the war will be held in the auditorium. Now, some of you didn't get that. And you really got to think about it. The first time I heard it, I didn't get it either. In case of rain, the war will be held inside the auditorium. In other words, rain or shine, snow, blizzard, it don't matter. We will have our war. Get your tickets now, because coming to a church near you, we're going to have war. All right? If you still didn't get that, I'm sorry. There's nothing else I can say to help you get that. Historical artifacts, art, civilizations are dated by wars. There were pre-war era guitars. We talked about that last night. Civil War era banjos, Revolutionary era furniture. Everything is dated by wars, because the wars is how we think of things. And for the first time ever in our generation, the world has the capability, in my opinion, to destroy itself. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. Never in prior history has that been possible. When George Washington read the following scripture in 1776, do you suppose it made much sense to him as he looked at his flintlock rifle? And the verse is this, Matthew 24. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world, for to this time, no, not ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. What did George Washington understand when he read that verse? I doubt very much. Because that verse was for another generation that understood it, and I believe that generation is you and me. You and me can understand that. Now let's jump into this. The history of warfare. For about 5,000 years of human history, not a lot changed concerning the art of war. Swords, spears, bows, and I think I've got some slides here for you. Here's the book, 7 O'Clock's a-Ticking. Here's what we're going to look at tonight. History of war, the nuclear age, and a line in the sand. We'll end with that. War history. We're going to look at war now. The history of warfare. Here's Cain killing Abel. And I actually had the idea that he killed him with a rock, but I cannot find documentation of that. So I took that out. We don't know. We know he killed him, but we don't know if he killed him with a stick or a rock or if he strangled him. I mean, I don't know. But it's the first killing in the Bible. You can argue it's not necessarily a war, but you know what? There's 4 people in the world, and 2 of them got in a fight. Sounds like a war to me. But Cain kills Abel, and you can see him there. And I don't know how they got that picture, but it's in black and white, so it's a long time. There's an actual picture of the actual event. Now, some of you are not laughing. It bothers me that you didn't get what I'm saying there. So here's some weapons of warfare from hundreds of years. We got bow and arrows. In fact, the preacher was looking at one of them today, one of them crossbows. They're still making those things. They're antiques. Them go way back to primitive days. We got hatchets and axes and spears and knives and shields. That's the weapons of war. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, the men met each other on battle with shields and swords and spears. And we read history. You read about all these things. All right, so it is approximately 1000 AD. Now, that's the year 5000. 1000 AD is 1,000 years after Christ. There's 4,000 years in the Old Testament. And then the 1,000 years into the New Testament. 1,000 years, 1000 AD. Somewhere around there, gunpowder was first invented or found or discovered and was used in a battle. Gunpowder. So after 5,000 years, man, we're starting to get modern. Got gunpowder. We can make firecrackers. We can blow stuff up. We can blow people up. We can blow up houses. We can knock walls down. This is great. We can achieve greater things in battle. And so here's another picture. I don't know who that is, but there's a fight going on. We progressed after gunpowder comes along. We progressed. We got the flintlocks there. You can see the flintlock. I think on the bottom is probably a cap and ball, but things are evolving. Now we can put gunpowder in there and get a flame or a spark and explode the gunpowder, pushing some kind of a rock or some kind of round thing or piece of glass, something, and propelling it across the air. And now you don't have to have hand-to-hand combat. You can throw something from this barrel of this gun across the way and kill somebody with it. And so we've made another step here. And things are really starting to change. And now we've got cannons, and we put them on these ships. They got ships now, and we have battles at sea. That keeps it off the land. Keep them before they get to your property. You go out there and you meet them on the ocean, and you have a battle out at sea. There's a cannon. It looks like a Civil War era cannon or whatever, but just ways with the invention and discovery of gunpowder, they found ways to propel a rock or a ball or whatever it is they formed, and they could shoot that out of that thing. I was in I forget where it was. It was a Civil War college my daughter and I was at a couple years back, and it happened to be they were in session and they were having a class, and they let us sit in on this class for a few minutes. They had all these old guns and muskets and stuff, and they were teaching the class the history of guns. And they said all guns have these certain things in common. They have a way so they have either a spring or a chamber for powder, or regardless how modern the gun got, they do the same thing. There's some sort of a lead ball in there that gets propelled out the end of the barrel. All they did over hundreds of years was to make it shoot better, make it be quicker, make it easier to load, make the bullet go faster. But it's basically the same principle. And it's all about devising weapons of warfare to kill one another. So there's a cannon there. We've evolved a little bit. We get the planes, and they even invented the machine gun. And the Germans invented, I think, the system of shooting in between the propeller blades as the timing of the engine. It would shoot the bullets in between the blades. And if you knew that, you'd be scared to death to shoot that thing, thinking, is it lined up right? But they really did. They shot in between as the propeller's going around. That was timed perfectly where the bullet would go. Some of you didn't know that, but that's the truth. And they would shoot with these machine guns. Here's a modern Army Marine. Phil probably lugged these around when he was in the Marine Corps. There's a machine gun, and just a way to kill more people, right? So this is warfare. The invention of gunpowder would change how man would practice war. Portable cannons were first used in 1450 by the French, who also invented that flintlock rifle we looked at early in the 1600s. In the middle of the 1850s, look 5,800 years later after Adam. In the 1850s, the breech-loading rifle was introduced. In the early 1900s, 5,900 years after Adam, we finally get this machine gun that we see here. We got machine guns are invented, and of course they get better as time goes on, and they're pretty amazing now. In 1905, the Germans invented the first submarine called a U-boat. Now we can take weapons, and now we can take our war under the ocean, where no one can see us and sneak up on somebody on top of the ocean. These are great inventions. It's all about warfare and killing one another. In 1915, just a few years after the Wright brothers, the Germans introduced the first fighter planes with workable machine guns. After 5,900 years of human history, warfare had evolved from the primitive swords and spears to firing projectiles from airplanes and submersible boats and from guns on the ground. But the world had seen nothing yet, because what is about to happen will make all this stuff look like little toys that are in kindergarten that kids play with. Man was just getting started in his quest to wage war and to annihilate cities and kingdoms and peoples of the world. Man was just getting started. And we enter, after 5,950 years of human history, we entered the nuclear age. And this is where we are today, the nuclear age. And this is some things that I want to share with you tonight. Let me read a little bit from something called the Manhattan Project. Anybody ever heard of the Manhattan Project? Now, that's not a building, a high-rise in New York. The Manhattan Project is the team that was put together. Over 100,000 people were put together to build a nuclear bomb right here in America. It was top secret. Almost nobody working on it knew what they were building. There were several different places. One of them was in Tennessee. One of them was in Illinois. There were several different locations. Of course, New Mexico is where some of it was, and they actually tested this thing. We'll get to that in a second. But early in 1939, the world scientific community discovered that German physicists had learned the secrets of splitting a uranium atom. Now, this is language you and I hear all the time now. We hear about the uranium that Hillary sold to the Russians. But we're investigating Mr. Trump for something, I don't know what. But she's the one that sold 20% of our uranium that builds these bombs that kill people, that kill millions of people, and could destroy the world. She sold 20% of that and got millions of dollars for her foundation as bribery for that, and she's not even under investigation. Now, go figure, if you will. And so I mean, that's the truth. That's the absolute truth. Trump is being investigated for collusion. Collusion, number one, nobody knows how to define collusion. What is it? Number two, collusion, even if collusion means that you talk to the Russians and try to get them to interfere with our election, it's not against the law. And so what is it all about? But it is against the law to be bribed and to sell 20% of our nation's uranium to our enemy. And but that's okay, and and a whole bunch of other things. So in the 1930s, the race was on between Germany and the United States to be the first to build a nuclear bomb. On June 7th, 1942, a physicist named Robert Oppenheimer, you ought to know that name. Robert Oppenheimer was appointed director of the highly secretive Manhattan Project to develop a nuclear weapon for the United States. Because early in 1939, the world scientific community discovered German physicists were just about ready to split the atom, and it was believed it wouldn't be long. Germany would have the bomb. Now remember, 1939, we're not in the war yet, but everybody else is. Right? We get in the war in 1941, December, but Britain's already getting bombed, and the world war is already going on. We're just not in it yet. And some people got concerned that Germany's going to have this weapon pretty soon, and they're going to take over the world, and we'll all be speaking German, right? Jawohl. So, Robert Oppenheimer was appointed the director. Scientist Albert Einstein, his name keeps coming up, doesn't it? Einstein. By the way, he's a Jew who fled Nazi persecution, and another guy named Fermi, who escaped fascist Italy, were now living in the United States. They agreed that the president must be informed of the dangers of atomic technology. In the hands of Germany and their partners. Fermi traveled to Washington in March to express his concerns to government officials, but few shared his uneasiness. Einstein penned a letter to President Roosevelt, FDR, urging the development of an atomic research program later that year. Roosevelt saw neither the necessity nor the utility for such a project. He didn't want to do it, but agreed to proceed slowly. In late 1941, the American effort to design and build an atomic bomb received its code name, the Manhattan Project. And it's not a high-rise in New York City. It is a project put on by the government, top secret. At first, the research was based only in a few universities: Columbia University, University of Chicago, University of California at Berkeley, and there's some others here. A breakthrough occurred in December 1942 when Fermi led a group of physicists to produce the first controlled nuclear chain reaction. Is this boring? Under the grandstands of Stagg Field at the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago first did this nuclear chain reaction. Don't ask me what happened or what it meant, but it was pretty big. In 1942. After this milestone, as they call it, funds were allocated more freely and the project advanced at breakneck speed. Nuclear facilities were built at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Brother Phil, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Hanford, Washington. The main assembly plant was at Los Alamos, New Mexico. Robert Oppenheimer was put in charge of putting the pieces together. After the final bill was tallied, nearly $2 billion. Now, that's 1945 now we're talking. That's a lot of money in 1945. It's quite a hunk of change now, but it was a lot of change then. $2 billion had been spent on research and development of the atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project employed over 120,000 American citizens. Secrecy was paramount. They'd never do this today. Never do this today. CNN would have this all over the news. It'd be leaked. And secrecy was paramount. Neither the Germans nor the Japanese could learn of this project. Remember, when we are at war now. We're at war with Germany and Japan, but so we do not want the Germans or the Japanese to know that we're working on this, right? Nothing's changed, right? History repeats itself. Roosevelt and Churchill agreed that Stalin, the Russian leader, would be kept in the dark. Didn't matter. He got his bomb later. Consequently, there was no public awareness or debate. In other words, nobody in America voted on this or told our country to do it. It was all in secret behind our back. Keeping 120,000 people quiet would be impossible. Therefore, only a small privileged amount of inner scientists and officials knew about the atomic bomb's development. In fact, here's a tidbit for you. When FDR died, President Truman became the president. After they swore in President Truman, they called him aside and told him that we had the atomic bomb. First time he'd ever heard of it. And by the way, Truman is the one who made the decision to drop the bomb on Japan. Both bombs on Japan. Although the powers remained unaware of the efforts, Germany and Japan and them, American leaders later learned that Russian collusion goes way back to 1940s. A Soviet spy named Klaus Fuchs, or something like that, had penetrated the inner circle of scientists, the first Russian spy we know of here, who got into our government and got this information. So Russian collusion, whatever Russian collusion is, maybe this is it. Maybe that's what we ought to be investigating tonight. By the summer of 1945, Oppenheimer was ready for the test. This is unbelievable what you're going to hear now. And by the way, here's a picture of scary-looking Mr. Einstein. And on the right is FDR. And, of course, he sent a letter, or he met with him, begged him told him, listen, the Germans are going to get it. We've got to beat them to it. Now, there's a lot of debate today. Should we have built the bomb? Should we have bombed Japan? Would Hitler build the bomb? Would Hitler have bombed us? Guaranteed. Guaranteed. We had no choice. Now, that's something for you to think about. Should we have bombed Japan? If we hadn't bombed Japan, they claim hundreds of thousands of Americans would have died before the war ended. They feel like they definitely saved American lives. And so that's a debate that still rages in college universities. And as people get further from the Bible and further from the truth, I think your average person today thinks we did wrong. So you'll have to decide what you think. But so by 1945, Oppenheimer's ready to test the first bomb. July 16th, 1945, near the end of the war here, at Trinity Site near Alamogordo, New Mexico, scientists of the Manhattan Project. By the way, here's a book somebody wrote called the Manhattan Project. So that's the book cover there for you. I'm going to show you a picture of the bomb in just a second. It's going to blow your mind. You've never seen anything like it in your life. It's not what you think. I know what you're thinking of a big long bomb. We think of a bomb. We think of this big long pointy thing. Wait till you see this thing. They're getting ready to test this thing. They don't have any idea what's going to happen. They're going to watch it. They're going to watch it from 10,000 yards away. I think that's several miles. They're going to watch. They're going to have cameras, and they don't know what's going to happen. So scientists of the Manhattan Project readied themselves to watch the detonation of the world's first atomic bomb right here in America, in Mexico, New Mexico. The device was affixed to a 100-foot tower made of steel. They built this tower 100 feet in the air. I guarantee you, not one of those people building that tower knew what it was for. They were just told to build it. And they hoist this bomb up that tower, 100 feet up the tower, and I'm thinking they got a wire. You think of like the Road Runner and the Coyote unwinding the wire, and he's going to push the thing down. I don't think it was quite like that, but I don't think it was wireless either. There had to have been some sort of detonation device. Could have been a timer. Some guy's up there, and then he runs for his life, hoping the timer is going to give him time to get to the wall over there. And so I'm ad-libbing here. That's not in here, but I thought you might be bored. I figured you got to add Coyote and the Road Runner in here somewhere. So they build this 100-foot steel tower, made steel girders like a skyscraper girders, and they hoist this bomb 100 feet in the air out in the desert now, New Mexico. It's desert. There's no mountains. There's no trees. You could see forever. And flat Earth, you could see forever. Of course, that's another story, but that was last year. But no mountains, no trees. That'll make a difference in a minute when I explain something here. No one was properly prepared for what happened next. Nobody. Not the scientists, not Einstein, nobody. A blinding flash when they detonated this thing. And again, I don't know if it was the pushing of a thing or pressing of, I don't know. But when it went off, a blinding flash visible for 200 miles. Remember now, that's why it's desert, no mountains, no trees. You can see a long ways, right? I don't think you can see 200 miles though, but a flash was visible. Now, 100 feet in the air, 200 miles away. A mushroom cloud reached 40,000 feet in the air, blowing out windows of civilian homes 100 miles away, blowing out windows. How do you explain that? Hello, 911. No 911, but yeah, my windows just got blown out. I think it's them teenagers next door. I think where's my windows? What happened? I don't know. Funny how we can laugh about nuclear blow-ups and stuff. So, when the cloud returned to Earth, it created a half-mile wide crater, metamorphosing sand into glass. And the first government cover-up began. A bogus cover-up story was quickly released explaining that a huge ammunition dump had just exploded in the desert. Our government lied to us. Now, that's the only time they've ever lied to us. They wouldn't lie to us about anything else. Obamacare is good for us. They wouldn't lie to us about that. Taxes are good. And by the way, these taxes, this is just temporary. We're going to lower them later. That's funny. Yeah. A cover-up. They had to tell the American people what happened. Because 200 miles away, people saw a light. And 100 miles away, windows are blown out. What? No, and people must have heard the word, the ground shook and this explosion, and we got to explain this. Now, you think things recently that have happened, do we believe everything we're told today? It seems like a lot of us do. And I'm not going to get into 9/11, but I got a lot of questions about 9/11. I don't have answers. Eventually, I quit talking about it. I mean, what are you going to do about it? But what they say happened doesn't fit. It's not possible. And don't get me going on that. But when you learn stuff like this, and then you hear stuff today, and it's conspiracy. Wait a minute now. Is it? Is it possible that would our government lie to us? They lie to us every day. And they said an ammunition dump exploded in the desert. Soon word reached President Truman that the project was successful and the world had entered the nuclear age. Here's the bomb that they blew up that day inside the metal. By the way, the metal, I don't think I read it here. It's in another article I'm going to read to you. Have you ever seen anything like that in your life? Don't that look like a 60s Lost in Space movie or something? Warning. Remember the robot? Warning. That's what that looks like to me. It doesn't look like it's real. And let me read you something about that. I got it here somewhere. On July 16th, 1945, exactly 5:29 and 45 seconds a.m., why they're so precise, I don't know, the world entered the unprecedented atomic age with the successful testing of the most powerful weapon known to man, 1945. You know what its name was? Gadget. Gadget, this thing is called Gadget. This is the bomb that they tested. This is pre-Gadget. Now that don't exist anymore. That was vaporized, but that's it. All of them is crazy. Gadget, the first atomic bomb, a 6-foot spear with a grapefruit-sized plutonium core. How big is a grapefruit? About like that? That's all that was in there, as far as the nuclear whatever. I wonder what Hillary sold to Russia. Yeah, one grapefruit size killed 80,000 people. One bomb in Japan. How much of that did Hillary sell to our enemy? It's a valid question, folks, that Congress should have been asking. And, we got Judicial Watch sticking up for us. Where's Congress? Where's Sessions? Attorney General Sessions. And he's history, but he ought to be brought before a tribunal and tried for treason. I'm serious. I mean, our country's in trouble. Our country's gone. And we had an attorney general who wouldn't prosecute treason in the government. And it's like Mr. Trump is all by himself up there. You know why? Because he is. And it's hard to find somebody to gather around him that'll be with him. I think Mr. Pence is with him. And but my goodness, you better thank God for that man. You better be praying for Mr. Trump. Quit criticizing and pray. He's got a lot on him. I believe God put him there for such a time as this. Okay, he's got some moral issues. We all do. And I know a lot of preachers that done worse things than Trump's done. And he said some bad things. I said bad things years ago when I was young too. I said things, preacher, I'm ashamed. I'd be embarrassed if some of you in here heard what I said when I was a teenager. I mean, I remember some of them. I wasn't saved. I would be embarrassed if you knew some of the things I said about girls. Same junk that Trump said. But we want to destroy him. So we might as well get in line. Yeah. We're all guilty. God put him there. He's the Cyrus. Look up Cyrus in the Bible. God put him there for a reason. A 6-foot spear, the grapefruit-sized plutonium core covered in cables, as you can see there, was born out of the Einstein-inspired Manhattan Project, was detonated in the desert near Alamogordo, New Mexico. Does that place still exist? Alamogordo? It probably was vaporized. I don't know. But overseeing the project, and I won't read all of this here, but Oppenheimer is there. It was codenamed Trinity, inspired by a poem by John Donne. The original $6,000 program budget skyrocketed to a cool $2 billion after Einstein raised multiple concerns that the Nazis were close to perfecting their own game-changing weapon. I'm repeating some stuff, but this is a different article. It says it a little different. Ahead of testing, crews built a steel... See, this isn't in the other article. Ahead of testing, the crews built a steel 100-foot-tall tower to launch Gadget. They hoisted it up there. I got a picture of it here. They hoisted this Gadget thing up there. 3 observational bunkers for Manhattan Project researchers to safety to watch from. These bunkers they built were for the people to watch. The steel girders were for the bomb to be hoisted up in. The bunkers were built 10,000 yards around the steel tower, according to the Department of Energy. That's a few miles away. They didn't know how close they wanted to be to this thing. I think I'd wanted to have been further away than that. But there's a picture of it in here. I don't have a picture up there. You'll have to talk to my wife about that. I can't do it all. She didn't get a picture of the steel girders. At least I don't know if she did. We'll see in a second. I don't think she did. But the explosion vaporized the steel tower. That wasn't in the other article. The steel tower that held the bomb was gone. It was like it was never there, vaporized. Sent a massive shock wave across the desert sand, produced mushroom clouds soaring 40,000 feet in the air, according to the Department of Energy. They could use some of that energy, huh? And immediately after the blast, Oppenheimer, who headed this up, reportedly exclaimed, anybody know what he said? 2 words. Anybody know what he said? Any historians here? It worked. Yeah, you gotta see the humor in this. He really said it. It worked. And in an interview about the decision to drop the bomb, Oppenheimer said, at the moment of the explosion, he thought of a line from the Hindu scripture, and I can't read what that says. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Kind of almost a warped mind, huh? I'm looking at a different picture than that, but the same bomb. But on August 6, 1945, the U.S. dropped a 5-ton atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The blast killed a bomb similar to this right here. By the way, we only had 2. Now, they didn't know that. When we dropped the second bomb in Japan, they finally gave up and raised the white flag, thinking we might drop another. We didn't have another one. Look, times were tough. They had to tighten your belt. We didn't have enough money to buy another one. So the blast killed 80,000 people immediately. I mean, just like that, 80,000 people were dead, and leveled 4 square miles of the city. That's Hiroshima, the first bomb. By the way, before they dropped the first bomb, I did not know this. Any Vietnam guys here? I've met several today. Vietnam guy. I met a Purple Heart guy today. Met another guy at supper tonight that was in Vietnam. No Vietnam guys here? The napalm. Remember the napalm? That was first used in Tokyo. I did not know this. They tried that first. They dropped napalm. It wasn't called napalm, but that's what it was. Fires were burning. Thousands of fires were burning in Tokyo, and they hoped that would break the back of Japan, but it didn't, and they didn't surrender, and so they decided to drop the atomic bomb. So they were trying to not drop the bomb, but the decision was finally made. They dropped the bomb. 80,000 people dead, instantaneous, they say. And then, of course, 4 square miles leveled, and of course, the radiation effect over months of time, thousands more would die. Probably more died from the radiation over the years than died from the bomb. The second bomb, because they still didn't surrender. The second bomb was dropped. Now, one of them, and I think it's the second one, the weather played a factor, and because the weather was bad, they couldn't drop it where they planned to drop it. Because back in them days, you had to look, you had to see your target. It's a little different today. And it was cloudy that day. So because of the weather, you talk about the rain out there and the fog, because of the weather, a bunch of people lived and a bunch of people died because they switched to plan B and they dropped I think it was the second bomb. They dropped the second bomb in a different location, and that broke the back of Japan, and they surrendered, and the rest is history. And by the way, 3 days later, the U.S. dropped another bomb on Japan's Nagasaki, just 3 days after the first bomb, killing. They gave them 3 days and they didn't surrender, dropped the second bomb. 40,000 people instantly died. Thousands more would die in radiation poisoning. 8 days later, Japan informally surrendered to the Allied forces, effectively ending World War II. They brought them on that ship. Remember, they humiliated them and broke their spirit, and that was the end of that. So, very interesting. Here's a newspaper from Japan. You may not, I know you can't read the fine print, but this is atomic bomb opens new era in scientific history. Japanese authorities over here, it says Japanese authorities continue investigation of damage, think several bombs hit. They're not even sure what hit them. They don't even know what happened. And, they think several bombs hit. How could one bomb have done this? My goodness. And that's what they're thinking. They don't know what happened. I mean, they didn't have Fox News or CNN to turn on. America just dropped a bomb today, and here's what it did. They didn't have that. And so it took them a long time to figure out what in the world is going on. And then 3 days later, another bomb. So here, by the way, these are actual photos of mushroom clouds, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I believe the order's backwards there, but it doesn't matter. These would have been taken by either the plane that dropped it or a plane with them up there. Talk about scary. How'd you like to have been on the plane watching the bomb drop, wondering if you're going to get out of there? My goodness, 40,000-foot mushroom cloud. You bet. Scotty, warp factor number 9. Get us out of here, right? Well, they didn't have warp factor number 9, and they didn't have warp factor 1. So here we are. In fact, we hadn't broken the speed. We hadn't broken the sound barrier yet. In 1947, M.R. DeHaan prophesied that one day man would break the sound barrier. 1947. This is 1945. They can't even go as fast as the speed of sound. 600 and something. Some of you guys out there, 600 miles an hour, something like that. Speed of sound. I don't know. But here's the mushroom clouds. Pretty amazing, huh? Now you think this is bad? It gets worse. If that's not bad enough, the hydrogen bomb comes just 7 years later. The hydrogen bomb came on the scene in 1952. Remember, 1945 here. 1952, 7 years later, man decides he can do better. And was successfully, the hydrogen bomb came on the scene at the behest of Einstein. And I don't think it's in my paragraph here, but Einstein said we shouldn't do this. And he said, where's this going to lead if we keep going down this road? But they did it anyway. 1952, they successfully tested a hydrogen bomb. I did a little study on the hydrogen bomb. It's still a nuclear bomb, but it's different, and a lot different. But it's still a nuclear explosion, it's still a nuclear device. It was successfully tested by the United States in the Marshall Islands. It is, get this, it is 1,000 times more powerful than one of those bombs dropped in Japan. 4 square miles, 80,000 dead, instantaneous, 1,000 times that. And you've got this hydrogen bomb in 1952. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Can you imagine the destructive force of just one of these going off in a major city? The death toll would be millions. I'm trying to get you to see that warfare has taken on a new level during the nuclear age that we live in. I find it interesting that the nuclear age began shortly before the rebirth of the nation of Israel, 1945. Israel was born in 1948. The hydrogen bomb has existed now for almost 70 years. What do you suppose we have today? 70 years since the hydrogen bomb, which is 1,000 times more powerful than the atom bomb dropped in Japan. What do you suppose the world has at its disposal today? Here's a few pictures of some bombs. That's what we would think a bomb looked like, but here's a picture of a bomb. I don't know what. Submarines. The first nuclear submarine right here, 1954. That's a long time ago. I wasn't even born. The first nuclear submarine. And I'll tell you what, they're not quite like that today. By the way, they're all over. We got dozens and dozens. Russia has them. America has them. They're all Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean. They're all over the place. Nuclear submarines. This is the USS Nautilus. And it's supposedly the first nuclear submarine. And not the last, the first. And now we have intercontinental ballistic missiles. What is that? That's a delivery device for a nuclear bomb. The ICBM is not the bomb. The ICBM is the delivery rocket that takes a missile thousands of miles to hit its target in another country. You don't have to be there. You don't have to be in a plane looking down. You simply push a button and a bomb goes off, flies through the sky, and blows up thousands of miles away while you're watching a soap opera on television. And or one of these submarines opens up a hatch, shoots up a missile to some country or some place and blows something up. Nobody even knows what happened or where it came from. That's the age that you and I live in right now. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Here's maybe a missile flying through the sky, maybe an ICBM, I don't know. Here's a missile, just a typical, some sort of a missile that could be launched from some. See, it's portable. It's got this truck here that can take it to different places. Not so they can hit something, so they can hide, so they don't get blown up before they shoot it, right? And so it's portable, not so they can get closer to the target. How close you got to get? Go 1,000 miles or more. It's to hide the thing. And of course, so now, with that said, let me close with this. I believe God has a line in the sand that He will not let man cross. Let me give an example. Back in the book of Genesis chapter 3, when man sinned, he was kicked out of the garden. Why? Not because he sinned necessarily. Because after he sinned, God put lambskins on them. And the relationship was restored. But then God begins, and there's your Trinity again, God begins to talk with Himself about the tree of life in the midst of the garden. Remember that? And He says, lest man should eat of that tree and what? Live forever. Wait a minute here. Wait a minute. We've missed something. Man sinned. He's hiding in the bushes. They've made fig leaves. In other words, man's good works trying to hide his sin from God and make himself feel better. God shows up and, oh, Adam, where art thou? Why are you hiding? I'm naked. I got fig leaves on, but I'm not fit for you to see me, God. And God, of course, God said, I guess not. I'm ad-libbing here, but, and of course, I believe they put their faith in the coming Messiah that will one day pay their sin debt. They're clothed in lambskins. The relationship is now restored as far as God can now communicate with man again. However, God begins to talk with Himself. I say that because I don't know how else to say it. It's the Trinity. And God's talking like He did at the beginning. He said, let us make man in our image. Now He's saying, we got a problem here. Man is now a sinner. He's redeemed, but he's still a sinner. Of course, I haven't shed my blood yet. But he's saved kind of on contract by trusting what's coming. But we got this tree of life here. If Adam should come and eat of that, he'll live forever. But he's not in the condition to live. And I don't understand all this. And if you do, help me out with it. But I'm not sure anybody understands. I've never heard anybody talk about this. I've never heard anybody mention that this event happened after they sinned, after they're clothed in lambskins. God begins to talk and says, hey, we got to do something here. If he comes back in here and eats of this tree, he'll live forever. That's going to mess things up. I believe God had a line in the sand, and He would not let man cross that line. And that's why God removed Adam from the Eden area, the Garden of Eden, removed him from there and closed the door to where man can never get to that tree. And I believe that you'll see that tree one day. But it's a line in the sand. God has a line in the sand. There's another line in the sand. I talk about 2 or 3 of them in the book. And, and I'm not sure I want to take the time to give them all, but I believe God has some lines in the sand that He will not let man cross. In Genesis 6, God seems to have had a line in the sand, and He killed the whole human race except for 8 people. It seems like the man had become so evil, and the imaginations of his mind had become so evil. It's like man had reached a stage that he was unredeemable, if that's right to say. But whatever it was, God destroyed them. It was like there was a line in the sand there. I think it's possible there's a line in the sand with this nuclear stuff. And like we talked about earlier about the bottomless pit and the devils from another dimension walking the earth, it seems like God's not going to allow that line to be crossed until it's His time for that. There's a place called CERN. Anybody ever heard of CERN over there in Switzerland? That superconductor over there. I've got some paperwork on it. I've met a guy that's an expert on that. Very strange, very interesting stuff. It's real. They believe they're scared. They believe they're going to open what they call a portal, a door to another dimension. The guy in the wheelchair, what was his name? That scientist, he just died. Yeah, Hawkins, Stephen Hawkins. He just died. I saw an interview with him. He said they shouldn't be messing with this. He says they're going to open a black hole and the whole universe is going to be sucked into it. Now, you and I know what the Bible says. We know that's not going to happen. But I think God has a line that He won't let us cross. And I think it's very possible that the nuclear age has a line in the sand. I believe this age is coming. I believe you're going to see it during the tribulation. But have you ever wondered, since 1945, why has nobody nuked anybody yet? You know, there's at least 9 countries that have nukes. Now, we know Israel has nukes. They're not on the list because they won't come out publicly and tell anybody, but everybody knows. So that would make 10. And I've heard stories Israel has weapons that they haven't even named. They have no name for it. I've heard military people talk that we have weapons that haven't been tested because they're afraid to test them. They were a little bit afraid testing this thing in 1945. They didn't know what was going to happen. So what have we got today? What does all this mean? It means since this technology is available, man can destroy himself tenfold. I believe it's 5 minutes to midnight. And I believe we're going home soon. Because we're right on the edge of somebody nuking somebody. I mean, we got Russia talking about it. We got China. We got Syria. All this junk going on over there. And everybody's on the border of Israel. Israel is not going to stand by and allow their country to be taken over. I wouldn't be surprised if Israel's the first one to set off a nuke somewhere. We'll just have to wait and see. But I believe this is a ticking clock proving that we're near the end of this thing. Preacher, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you're going to ask the young lady to come and sing during the invitation. I'm going to ask you to come. And I'm just trying to say this evening, I think this is a ticking clock. And I think it shows that we're at the end of this thing. And as our Lord of the Rings movie says, as Sam and Frodo are on the rock, as they've thrown the ring, and the Battle of Armageddon has happened, and they're laying on the rock, and Frodo leans over and says to Sam, if you've seen the movie, here we are, Sam, at the end of all things. I believe that's where we are. We're at the end of all things, and the Lord's getting ready to come back, and you better be ready. Preacher, I'll turn it over to you.
We'll ask Megan to come. She's going to sing the very first song she sang this evening again for our invitation. In that song again, it asks a very important question, being left behind. There's one thing for certain tonight, the Lord's coming. And He's not slack concerning that promise. Are you ready tonight? Are you saved? Have you trusted Him? If not, be a good night to do it. As Brother Dan had spoke a few moments ago too, he mentioned us as God's people. I've never seen the likes. I know I said this last time probably in our conference, and I'll say it again tonight. When you invite God's people to the house of God, and look, this place should be filled tonight. Sad tonight. Where are we at? Where do we need to be? We need to be calling out to God. Ask Him to forgive us and help us tonight. Souls are lost, need to be saved. Jesus is coming. As she comes and sings tonight, if you have need to come to the altar, then you come on tonight. Do business with the Lord.